even the most experienced of photographers can sometimes make stupid choices. This is one such occasion. On this job, penny pinching, being parsimonious, tight, trying to save a few pennies, almost ruined an image that would put me on a different level, an image that would go on to win me my second World Press Photo Award. Now, the trip was a memorable one. It was a few days in Iceland with the writer Lynn Barber, who was doing the interview. Lynn had brought her husband, David, and cleverly changed a kind of working assignment into a city break, a romantic city break for two. So that left me feeling a bit of a gooseberry. And so I spent most of the time wandering the streets of the city, listening to Homogenic, the album that the record company had sent over that she was promoting, a sort of gloomy avant-garde number, slightly melancholy but very intense. Although there was a lot more money in the system back then, sloshing around for editorial assignments, the Observer very rarely enabled me to bring an assistant on foreign trips. Sometimes I'd find someone at the location or get the PR to hold a reflector. But in this instance, I was on my own. But it did give me, all that time walking around, did give me an opportunity to sort of take photographs for the fun of it. Just have a little bit of a holiday. I took pictures down on the docks of chains with sort of condensation on them. Just 35mm pictures, occupy my time. After my day of isolated wandering, it was good to meet with Lynn and the publicist. I sort of, I think, probably started to feel a bit lonely. And I wanted to sort of get my pictures. That's what I was there for. We had a sense that we were dealing with someone quite special from the publicist, because prior to the introduction, we were informed that it's Björk and not Bjork. A bit like when you meet the Queen and it's ma'am, as in jam, rather than ma'am. I think fair enough. I mean, I guess Björk is musical royalty. Initially, she seemed timid, even introverted. But I could immediately see, although time was sparse, that this would be a simple shoot. She was wonderful to photograph. Elfin, playful, visually sophisticated and engaged in the process. It was easy. I'm sure every photographer who gets to take her portrait will put the picture in his or her portfolio. Given where we were, it would have been ludicrous not to do an environmental portrait. The melancholy streets of Reykjavik were calling. So we went straight out into the cold Icelandic air, the mist softening the already ghostly light. Immediately outside, and I realized the whole building is covered in scaffolding with windbreak. I sort of get it into this sort of matrix, a sort of outdoor studio, and I use the material to partly obscure my subject. I mean, it's always the case that less is more. At one point, she sort of stuck out her tongue. I don't think I would have told her to do that. I remember she laughed at me because I asked her to do it again spontaneously, a kind of ridiculous thing to ask. But that was the picture. I had already recce'd the immediate area and found a pastel, sort of subtle, distressed, with a really nice patina wall to shoot her against. And then a sort of corner set up where there was a window looking into a room with huge orange buoys. Things were getting interesting. I was just starting to get warmed up. I think I was sort of breaking down her reticence, and then suddenly the shoot was over. I think I had 20 minutes in total. I used my usual medium format cameras, my two favorites really back in the day, my Hasselblad. I do that because it's sort of a waist level thing, and my Fuji rangefinder. And film, obviously, black and white and colour. I was always an early adopter of technology. I had a digital camera, but the images were never high enough resolution for print. For that, my preferred option was to shoot on negative and then scan. Now, it's embarrassing to admit this because it's so expensive. It was ridiculous. It was a sort of Heath Robinson contraption. I think Hasselblad bought the company, but it was an Imicon scanner. They were made in Denmark. And it was a wonderful bit of kit. I've still got it. It's probably worth about 25 quid now. But I would scan the negatives, digitize them, and then they'd be in Photoshop. And suddenly I had all the control that Photoshop gives you. And I could sort of work the images. I could retouch the images if I wanted to. And it was about sort of seizing the means of production, giving me more control. There's a whole nother video about that because there was a whole community that was formed through these relationships with your printer, with your lab, the various people that enabled you to make your work. And now you can do it all at home, sitting at your desk with this amazing software, Photoshop. So before then, I would give the magazine a selection of prints, which they would scan and reproduce in the magazine. After this point, what I did was I gave them a CD and maybe a couple of prints that I printed myself for reference, but I was giving them the digital files. It was a precursor to digital cameras, which came a little later. Back in Clerkenwell, in sort of central East London, where the lab is located that processed my film. They do a great job, they're really good quality. They're not sponsoring this, Metro Imaging. I decide to walk past Metro and go to this other place that my assistants told me about, a sort of bargain basement operation that will process the film for like 2 quid, cash. And, you know, my sort of tightness gets the better of me and I think, well, I'll give them a go. Absolutely ridiculous thing to do, given that I've gone all the way to another country to shoot this stuff, and it's not like I can reshoot it, but I do. I get them to process it, and the negatives come back, and because of the way I'm now working, I'm scanning them. I don't really notice that they don't really look like negatives should look. If you look at the rebate of the negatives, of any negative, where the numbers are on the side, they should be black and white because they're exposed onto the film when they make the film. And a good way of knowing whether a negative has been properly processed is to look at those numbers because they should be clearly legible. In this case, let's just say they were a bit washed out. Although the set of images I gave to the Observer were a bit grainy, I didn't really mind. In fact, I sort of told myself that I was referencing Sarah Moon, sort of atmospheric, grainy, blurry imagery, or kind of paying homage to neo-impressionist painting like Seurat. And the pictures look great, you know, they look great in the magazine. The magazine were happy, I was happy. I didn't really think anything more of it. At the end of every year, most photographers, especially magazine photographers, enter effectively the Oscars of photography, the World Press Photo Awards, which take place over a weekend in Amsterdam. And it's a great honor and a great opportunity, because if you do win a prize, all the picture editors of the great magazines around the world, they attend these awards and they're in the audience, and you get to give a presentation. And so at some point, my pictures of Björk were sort of thrown into the mix. And I was delighted when I got a fax, it was in the time before email, telling me that I'd won a prize. So I thought, this is a great opportunity. I'm gonna get a beautiful, archival, analog, bromide print made from the negative of the image, the successful image. I'm going to give it to the best printer in London, and I'm going to get him whatever it costs, I'm going to get him to make this print. So I go in and I give them the negatives, and after a few days, I get a sort of panicky phone call. They can't get anything out of the negative. In fact, they say it looks like it's been developed in urine. And my mind goes back to the stupidity of trying to save money and the poor choices I've made. Thank heavens for Photoshop. A digital output is made and my bacon is saved. But I learnt a valuable lesson. Do not economize with your work. I'm quite proud of these. My World Press Photo Awards for Björk and Richard Branson. These are the contacts. You can see they're really lacking in any deep blacks. There's not enough information there. And there's no writing down the side of the negative. So dead giveaway for poor processing. I won't name the lab, mainly because I can't even remember what they were called.